Hello, this is Jack Olmstead, GMO Free News. I'm here today with Elise Conklin and Liv Larson. They are members of the production crew that came up with From Flint documentary, the Michigan State University students. They had this as a class project and turned it into a documentary, a real documentary. They posted a couple of clips, teasers up on YouTube. And we're going to talk to them about their experience. How are you doing today?
Hi, Jack. We're doing really well. How are you?
Where are you right now? Are you at school?
We are actually. We're in the Communication Arts and Sciences building where we have most of our classes. So we're just kind of taking advantage of the space.
Really fast Wi-Fi, so we figured my apartment would not be a good idea.
Good Wi-Fi. Well, I appreciate good Wi-Fi. Let me tell you. Tell us about From Flint. How did the whole idea come about?
Well, so it's for the class project for our capstone documentary class. And the point of the class is there's two groups and you make two documentaries. And each person had to come up with a pitch for a film. And so one of the pitches was the Flint Water Crisis and doing a documentary on that. And it got picked as one of the two documentaries that's going to be produced. And so we have a team of 5 members. It's myself, Elise, and then there's 3 others. There's Isaac, Jenna, and Lauren. And so we just figured that because it was such a national issue and it was gaining so much attention that it'd be almost silly to not go after this when it's 45 minutes away from where we are and it's just really readily available to us.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I mean 4 miles away there's the Capitol, and I'm from Grand Rapids. I've lived in Michigan my entire life, but I've never really been to Flint. It was always kind of like my mom would always be like, "Oh, don't go to Flint," and then my dad was just kind of like he'd just kind of be like, "Don't really." But after going there for the shoots, like it's just this incredible community, and there's some of the most inspiring and loving people that have been through so much, and I feel so honored that they're accepting us and they're so willing to tell us their stories, and they're really inspirational people. And I think that they've faced so much hardship that, this is outrageous for them to actually have to face a water crisis on top of everything else that's happening. It's one too many. It's ridiculous.
I think I read on your blog. I'm getting feedback now. Audio feedback in the room. We were fine in the green room. I read on your blog, From Flint blog, which is a WordPress blog. You wrote that you were advised not to stop at red lights at Flint.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the stigma Flint had to you. Is that right?
Yeah.
It was a bad place.
Exactly. I always heard about it. It's like, oh, murder capital USA. Like that's Flint's legacy. But there's so much that's happened. Like, Michael Moore is a very passionate Flint resident. So just looking at his documentaries and the way he talks about it, like all the Flint residents are like that. They love that city and they're so proud of it, and they get so defensive when you're like, oh, it's murder capital, and they're so insistent that no, Flint has so much more to offer. Like if you just need to get to know Flint, and it's so difficult because people have this stigma about it.
Let's get to know you. I've got your about page up. Tell us about yourself. How did you get involved in documentary filmmaking?
Oh, that's quite the question. I came in to Michigan State as a media and information major, and it's kind of like marketable creativity. And then I really got interested in film. I was a big theater buff in high school, but I did some stuff with camera, and I always really, really liked it. But coming here, and I really like editing. I also direct, but I really love, especially in documentary, it's like piecing together a puzzle. And I feel like I'm actually doing something necessary, like especially with this piece. This is probably one of my favorite things that I've worked on. It's really incredible to kind of see how all these stories are unfolding and how they interact with each other. And it's really spectacular. So as a documentary filmmaker, I feel like it's something that I need to do and something that I want to do. And it's really important. And I don't know, documentaries are something that go under the radar a lot. You see a lot of people and you ask them like, oh, have you ever watched a documentary? And it's like, I mean, Blackfish. And then they'll see like, oh, I've seen Super Size Me. And I'm like, okay, that's nice. But there's a lot of really incredible things. Even on Netflix, there are some amazing films. And I just want to be a part of that. I want to be able to bring light to these situations. I think it's very necessary.
Whoa, my voice is coming through again. Did you edit this piece that we have on right now?
No, I'm the director for this project. Lauren she's our lead editor, and she's amazing. I'm helping as much as I can when it comes to that kind of thing, like transcribing interviews and hunting down news clips for her. But she's a really talented editor, and she has a great eye and a great ear for editing. So both the promotional video and our teaser trailer were both edited by Lauren.
What were your job duties as editor? Not editor, as director.
Right now, because there are only 5 of us, there's a lot of overlap. Because usually, if you look at, a film's credits are miles long. So we have a very solid team of 5. So it's kind of like, whatever happens. If like they need me to go and shoot, like I'll get a camera in my hands and I'll go shoot. But mainly it's making sure that we're consistent with our shots. All our lighting is consistent, just making sure that all the stories are being treated with respect and that we're making sure that we're really on point. And we really want to make sure that this story is about Flint being forgotten. Even though it has this huge spotlight, we really want to show, like, even though Flint is in the news and it's all over the place, especially in political debates, that Flint, the residents, have been forgotten. So it's kind of my job to make sure that we're all on point and that we make sure that everyone is still supporting that essence statement.
And Liv, what is your duties as producer, and how did you get involved in documentary filmmaking?
Well, I actually changed my major 5 times. I came in as business, and then I switched to like international relations and physical, like kinesiology, and it wasn't creative enough for me. I was always a very creative, artistic, dramatic person, and so I went into journalism, and I liked it. It was a lot of, like I like the creative writing and all that stuff, but I realized you had to be you kind of had to keep your personality out of journalism. You have to be very, very neutral, and you can't really be yourself too much in journalism. You have to tell other stories, but in documentary work, you can be yourself, and that's what I like about it. Is if I want to go do a documentary on Flint and I want to tell this side of the story, I can. Whereas in journalism, you kind of have to tell all aspects of the story, where I just want to focus on this. And so I added documentary as my minor, and I fell in love with it. And so as a producer, I send a lot of emails. I reach out to people, see if they want to sit down and interview with us, or if they know of someone who would want to interview with us, and make a lot of phone calls, and plan a lot.
I don't know how she does it. She's so good. Like, I'll get a phone call, and it'll be like, everyone's starting to get to bed, and like I'm in my pajamas, and Liv's like, hey, I got an interview. Are you ready to go? I'm like, yep, I can be. Let's go. And it's very, like, the people that we've interviewed so far, I don't know how Liv tracks them down. She's so good at what she does.
Yeah. But no, I'm very blessed to have such a good team that's always, I'm like, hey, I'm always going 100 miles a minute. Like, my brain is always thinking in 18 different directions. But my team is really good at picking up where my brain is going and be like, okay, we're with you. We get what you're saying. Because that can be kind of hard sometimes. But so they stick with me.
We try.
Yeah.
What was your pitch?
Our pitch?
Yeah,
for the Flint doc?
For the Flint doc, from Flint, yeah.
How
did you get everybody on board?
Oh, it was
What was
actually
pitch?
fairly easy. At first, everyone was a little, not apprehensive, but they kind of wanted to know, like, what our angle was.
Can you give us a timeline?
A timeline?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Who's the first person I reached out to?
Was it your idea?
It was mine and Isaac's. He's the director of photography. Him and I have worked together quite a bit before, and so we know how to work together really well. And so when we had to come up with the pitches, him and I both had the same idea to do Flint. And so we pitched that together, actually, and then everyone else was instantly on board.
Yeah, I remember we were sitting around like this big table, and everyone was talking about like, oh, well, I kind of wanted to do something about this, and like MSU has a lot of really interesting little subcultures and things like that. So we were all talking about this, and then suddenly Bob asks Liv, and she's like, well, I kind of wanted to do something on the Flint Water Crisis. And I'm like, of course, like, how could we not? So then, since there were 2 documentaries, we kept talking and pitching for really the second documentary, because it was always like, oh yeah, we're doing the Flint one, but what would the second one be? It was just, I mean, it was so obvious, like this is a story that had to be told. It's literally in our backyard, and I really loved the angle that Liv came up with like Flint being forgotten, and how we really want to tell the people's story, and how the people of Flint have been kind of forgotten and neglected. And that was mid-January, and then it just has been a whirlwind of just calling people, interviewing people, meeting all these amazing activists, and just honestly, I've been trying to keep up with Liv, and it's been difficult juggling schoolwork, because I'm a full credit student, and I work 30 hours a week, so it's been kind of crazy. But I mean, I just haven't been sleeping for the past few months. But how can you? I mean, after listening to what's been happening, just like turning your back on this, I couldn't do it. It's something that needed to be said.
So Liv, how are you tracking down these people? And how did you guys get up to speed on the story so quickly?
Well, Elise is super updated on the news, and as a journalism major, it's kind of instilled in me to always know what's happening. And so I don't even know. I'm on the internet a lot. So I was just kind of browsing and looking things up and trying to find the key players of the incident or the crisis was really our main goal. Is we need to find like the key players and then go from there. And so we kind of mapped out like a route, I guess, we wanted to take with the documentary, and we just kind of started looking, and I just, went on the internet and was just, like Flint medical community and scrolling through there, and I ended up finding Kathy Horton, who is in our documentary, and she was super willing to interview, and then just kind of like webbed out from there. Someone on Facebook was attending an event about Flint. So I went and I found the person. The Crossing Water was the group that was hosting the event, messaged them, and then that's how we found Michael Hood. So it just kind of like webbed out from just kind of initial Google searching and finding out where we wanted to take this documentary. So yeah, it's just been a lot of emails and a lot of searching on the internet.
It's also been really useful since, once you interview one person, they're really, really into it, and you're like, do you know any other families, or do you know anyone else who's really involved? And they'll just give us a list of names. We're like, oh yeah, we'll contact them. Like, we'll get you back involved with them and get them, as involved as they are. And it's this amazing community that, once we got Kathy, and then we got Melissa and Michael, and they're super into it, and they're nothing but helpful, and they're so passionate, really amazing people.
Yeah, and that kind of goes with what we were saying earlier about people were a little apprehensive at first, like, what is your angle? And so when we kind of were like, we don't want to focus on what the government is talking about. We want to know what the people are talking about. And once we told them that we wanted to give a platform for the people to speak on, they were on board instantly. Like right after that first initiation of what exactly is your angle, they're like, perfect, we're going. So once we kind of gained trust and an understanding of the basis of the documentary, everyone was super on board and willing to interview with us.
So your angle is the people, the residents of Flint. You're telling it from the inside out, not the outside in. Like the national news media, they come from the outside and they do their stories. You are embedded with the residents, and I say embedded because on Saturday I read your blog. You hung out with Melissa Mays at a bar, and you helped with the water delivery, right? Is that right?
Yeah, we ended up meeting Melissa at the Motor Shop was the name of the bar. And it was just her and like 4 really big burly dudes that worked at the bar, and they were just by themselves loading up water. And we just got there, we introduced ourselves, and we're like, you guys want some help? And they were like, oh my gosh, yeah. So we just loaded water up for probably half an hour, and then we went on the drive with Melissa, and we met a couple other people, and it just kind of expanded from there. And I think once, like we all were talking about this, once people in Flint realized we were there to help and not just to get a film or get our interviews or get what we wanted, the responses just kind of opened up and changed immediately, which I'd probably be the same way if, someone was coming in with a film crew, but we're here to help, and we want to try and get the stories out that deserve to be told. So
yeah, it's really clear, especially with, I mean, Melissa's been interviewed by everyone. She was talking about how, oh, CNN was in my house the other day and all this, like these crazy stories. And she's like casually talking with Michael Moore and all this stuff. And it's very clear that she's very much within the national spotlight, but we really don't want to just be, I don't know, another person just coming in, interviewing her and then leaving. Like we really want to be there and telling Flint's story, but also being there and if they need help delivering water or unloading water, because it is not a light substance. Like we were carrying like these massive packs. Liv was very sore the next day.
I'm very out of shape.
But it's so clear that, I mean, I've never been one to just kind of like sit back and film. I'm not afraid to get in front of the camera just so like if I'm delivering water, the story isn't about us. It's about, you know, helping Flint. And that means we're going to tell Flint's story, but we're also going to be there to deliver water. We're going to make sure that everyone is like, has a voice and that they're being heard.
How much footage have you got so far? How much are you going to get? And how long is this documentary going to be?
We've debated about that. We are aiming for a shorter length of around 30 minutes. Feature-length documentaries are very, very intense, and being full-time students and also having part-time jobs, I just don't know if our crew could give our all for a full length, but we know we have a solid short documentary of about 30 minutes so far. And I mean, most of the people we've interviewed are talkers. So we've got a lot of interview footage, and, you know, we're gaining more B-roll footage or other footage as we go along. And by going to water drives and going to events, like that's just adding to our collection of stuff to sort through and condense. I mean, it's going to be a very intense 30-minute documentary, I think.
We were sitting around the table and we were thinking about, okay, not only do we have to think about film festivals, but 26 minutes and 46 seconds is broadcasting length for PBS. So that would be amazing if we could get it on there. And then just financially, it's a little cheaper to do, like for film festivals, just entry costs and whatnot. But also, we really want this to be like as intense and as really kind of meaty as it can possibly be. And that we think like 30 minutes of just really hard-hitting facts and like super high emotions. That's really what we want. We don't really want to push this and be like, oh, look, I made a feature-length film just to say we made a feature-length film. We really want to make this as absolutely solid and positive as possible in 30 minutes.
What do you keep? What do you cut out? And are you going to do a behind-the-scenes cutting room floor clips on social media like Facebook or YouTube?
Yeah, we've been trying to, I guess, behind the scenes, we've been trying to post our Facebook page as much as possible, just by kind of posting behind the scenes photos and like what we did that day. But as far as like deciding what goes in the documentary, I mean, Lauren has got her work cut out for her. There is so much that can be done with what we have. And I mean, we're just going to get more interviews. And I mean, we just went and filmed, Bernie Sanders came and spoke at Michigan State, and we were allowed to have a media pass. And so we got him talking about Flint, like our own footage talking about Flint. So that was really cool. So that just adds to it as well. So, I mean, our editing team has some solid work.
It really does come down to like the essence statement. Like we really want to make sure that, okay, this is by the people for the people. So, I mean, there are a lot of like very big, elaborate stories, and there are some facts and things that they're really interesting. So they might go up on YouTube as little behind the scenes clips, but they might not actually make the final cut because we really need to keep, you know, the story arc in mind. But that's definitely going to be a very difficult, because there's so much, we've gotten so much amazing stuff. And we've talked to some really incredible people. And now that we're kind of in it, we keep being contacted by other people. And I mean, we're not really in the habit of saying no to a potential interview because, I mean, it might be gold. It could be someone like a really unique perspective. So really at this point, the editing is going to be really intensive. That's definitely going to be difficult, but Lauren is a really incredible editor. But then Isaac, Jenna, and I all have a lot of experience editing too. So it's probably just going to come down to like a really intense month of post-production, really deciding what deserves to go on our doc and what doesn't quite make the cut.
And that month is the month of April?
Yeah, March and April, yeah. We're hoping to get it done. We're having a premiere at a local movie theater. Like that's like the class final. So like we'll present our documentary and the other group will present their documentary as well at this movie theater. So for the class, at least, it has to be done by the week of April 25th. But I mean, we even talked about like maybe expanding it until May a little bit and like really fine tuning it or taking it in a little bit of a different direction than what we did for class. So we have a lot of freedom on this, which is nice. So
yeah. And our professor is really, you can tell he's very excited about what we're gonna do. He's always very excited. He's like, okay, what were your interviews? What happened? Can I see them? Do you have a trailer? And we're like, here. And he's just nothing but supportive. And he's been really great at like pointing us in the right direction, because he's also a very well informed person. You can tell he has a pretty long commute and he's always listening to NPR. So he's like, oh, I heard today this name and regarding the Flint, so you should check that out. And it's been nice to have someone that's so solid in backing us. But yeah.
And you're thinking about film festivals.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's where the bulk of, we have a little bit of funding and we're hoping to get more, but the bulk of what we have so far is mostly going to distribution fees. I mean, we already got an Excel spreadsheet up of what festival, when it's due, how much it costs, and where it is. And like, we've been just kind of, if we think of one that we might have forgot to add, or we see one or we hear one, we just add it to that list. And so once the premiere is done, we'll be able to like sit down for a weekend and just go through and put them in order and see what we need to do what. So
where do you get your funding?
We got a little bit from the Communication Arts and Sciences building at Michigan State, and we've been applying for a few grants, and that's just been starting. We've just kind of been getting the ball rolling on the funding stuff.
You're not on crowdsourcing page, GoFundMe?
Not yet. We have enough funding right now to get our production aspects covered. So once it gets closer to the distribution process, we did talk about putting up a GoFundMe or like an Indiegogo type thing where our friends and family can, contribute to that and help us be able to get it out to as many places as possible.
Yeah, that's definitely been discussed, and it's a lot more serious now that we have a trailer, but we didn't really want to just put up a GoFundMe of like, hey, give us money for this anonymous project. Like, now we have a trailer, we're starting to get interviews. This is really starting to happen. So we're going to need to think about, post-production costs, such as like graphic designers, composers, that kind of thing, but then overall distribution. And then if we have to drive anywhere, like gas isn't cheap, but at this point it's been kind of clear, like we're still students and like a lot of us have day jobs, but we're definitely not making this film to make money. Like, we really want to make this film so that it reflects, I keep saying the people, but that's really what this is about.
I thought gas was cheap in Michigan. It's like 65 cents a gallon.
It's cheap for when you're driving across campus, but when you're driving back and forth from Flint every day, it does eventually add up.
It does. You are students.
Yes.
How much footage have you already accumulated, and how much more do you want? I know you're going to Flint this Sunday.
Yep.
So how many trips to Flint have you made?
4. We just did our 4th one yesterday.
Yep.
So, and then we
yesterday.
Yeah.
That's a weekday. That's you're in school. Are you guys cutting classes or cutting out of work to go?
It's been really intense. It's kind of like, okay, we need to get, at least 2 people there. So I didn't have any classes last night, and then Isaac had a meeting that got out at 5:15. So I picked him up with the equipment, and then we drove right over to listen to Dr. Mona talk about lead poisoning and how residents of Flint, like what they can do for their children. And it was really amazing. She was a spectacular person. So we definitely, we want to get an interview with her, but we've already interviewed Michael Hood. We've interviewed Melissa. We interviewed Kathy. We had a really short interview with Charlotte, who works in a women's shelter. But overall, I would say we have, each interview is about 20 to 40 minutes. And we already have quite a few of those, and we have 2 cameras rolling. 20
to 40 minutes, 2 cameras rolling?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And we've gone
got a sea of digital bits.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. You've got your work cut out for you, trying to get it all down into 30 minutes, 26 minutes, or,
Yeah.
So you didn't have like a grandmaster plan of, this is a story, like a storyboard. This is a story we're going to tell. You're just going out and shooting, and that is what's going to drive the story.
I think that's kind of the beauty of documentary work, is you have an idea, and we had an idea. We had our theme and our essence statement, and you kind of know what you want to go for, but it changes as it changes day by day. Like, you know, I'm like, I just talked to someone on the phone today who invited us to go to something again, like something else on Sunday. So that could totally just change everything in the documentary. Like, you don't know what you're going to get. And you also have to, like, that's another harder part, I guess, is you have to listen to where your story is going and like what your people are telling you. Because if you go in with horse blinders on, you're like, I'm trying to prove this in my documentary, but your characters aren't saying that, then you kind of find yourself in the editing bay being like, oh, maybe this isn't where our documentary is going. And I think our crew does a really good job of listening to what our characters are saying and being like, oh, we can tie that to this or juxtapose it with this. And so we've all been brainstorming ideas after each interview and before each interview. And yeah, it changes a lot. But
yeah. And I mean, I like, as an editor, I've worked on a few projects, and you think you have so much, then you start cutting it down and you're like, oh gosh, maybe this won't even be 30 minutes, because you really want it to be just as solid as possible. You don't want your audience ever getting bored. You want to be able to tell the stories in a really engaging way. And I mean, sometimes like a 20-minute interview can be condensed into like 3 minutes, and they're 3 minutes of gold, and that's all you need. But you got to get people talking, and you got to get them really comfortable with like, okay, what you're there and what you're doing. But it's important for them to understand and actually talk to you, because then you're going to get the most genuine reactions. So sometimes it's going to be 40 minutes long, and sometimes you're going to only have 3 minutes of really, really solid stuff, but it's really worth it in the end to make something really powerful.
I've got your trailer up here.
Mm-hmm.
Who is this guy? Why is he so important with the mustache and the eyebrows?
Isaac could tell you that better than we could. Isaac's our cinematographer, director of photography. He's gotten a lot of our B-roll on his own time. His girlfriend actually lives in Flint, and so whenever he goes and visits her, he goes out and gets B-roll for us. And so that was one of his shots, and I'm not exactly sure who that.
I remember Lauren was really partial to it because we are kind of focusing on For the People, but there's the river in the background, and you can still see the city. But I'm not actually sure who that statue is of specifically.
Okay. April, that's when you are hoping to get this out, right?
Yeah, April 25th is the week of our premiere.
And where is that going to be?
At Studio C in Lansing. It's I think is it off the chain of CG cinemas? I don't know.
I think it's related to Celebration Cinema, and it's right by Meridian Mall. It's in Okemos, so it's really, really close to campus. And you know, we've talked to Melissa about it, and she's really excited about it. We talked to Michael, and he wants to come. So it's really cool, because it'll be kind of like a reunion of all the people that we've talked to, and then we'll get to see them interact. Because Michael and Melissa do know each other, but I don't know. They're usually kind of interacting and like, okay, we gotta go, we gotta deliver water. It's very high stress situation. So we hope that this documentary will be something that is a little bit more like cathartic for the viewers, instead of just kind of, oh wow, Flint, this is horrible, what are we gonna do? We want to make it something a little bit more, I guess, light, even though it's so emotional.
A light. The Flint story light.
Well, I think there's like an uplift. There's a strange uplifting sense in the documentary. And I know in Charlotte's interview, I asked her, I said, if you could say one thing to the people who did this to you, what would you say? And she said, I would tell them that I'm praying for them. And there's just this really strange, like dark beauty, I guess, in the crisis. And it's really bringing everyone together in the community. And I know every single person we've interviewed has said that, like, this, people come together in time of tragedy, in time of crisis, and they all lift each other up. You know, Michael was telling us that he'll go deliver water to a house, and then the people that he's delivering water to will be like, oh, can you make sure that our neighbor across the street has water, or my uncle down the road? And so they're all unifying in this time of tragedy and lifting one another up. And there's just this really dark beauty, I guess, behind the entire tragedy.
The element of community that's coming through is something that I personally have never witnessed. I mean, I grew up in a neighborhood my whole life before I came here, and like, sure, we had like an email list, and occasionally like there'd be like a birthday, or they were looking for a pet sitter or something. But Flint is something that I've really never witnessed before. They're so concerned about their neighbors, and they're so willing to just go out and help. And when we were delivering water to Charlotte, who runs the women's shelter, she goes through 4 cases of water a day because she has so many people she's taking care of. And one of the women there was talking about their neighbor, and then Charlotte was like, oh, we'll bring him some of our water later. And I was blown away, because even though they're facing such hardship, and I mean, it could be so easy to just hoard water and be like, this is mine. It's like, no, I need to share. I need to go and help my neighbors. It's something that's just completely baffling to me, because I came into Flint and I kind of had a few reservations, and I'm completely blown out of the water by the people that we've interviewed. They're so amazing.
So I asked this of everybody I interview that is connected with Flint, the Flint Water Crisis. What's the story? What's the Flint Water Crisis story? When did it start? How did people get into this situation?
Well,
what's your take?
Well, we've been really talking a lot how it's a situation about power. There is the difference and the separation of the people in power who did this and the people of, like, the citizens of Flint. And that's what a part of our documentary is giving the power and the voice back to the people of Flint to tell their stories. And I mean, you can trace this crisis back to, I mean, some people were tracing it back to when the GM plant left, even, you know, back in 2007, I think, back in the mid 2000s when the GM plant left. And, you know, just how a lot of people left, a lot of the upper class people left with the plant, leaving the middle class and the lower class stuck in Flint. And so that's kind of where people say it started, or it started in 2014 when they switched over from the Detroit River. So you can kind of like, and it just goes on and on and on from, you know, switching over to the Detroit River to the GM or the plant being like, hey, it's corroding our pipes. And they, you know, that they knew that the water was bad, and someone had to sign off on knowing that water was bad because that plant didn't want to use that water anymore. And so it just kind of, you know, and it didn't really blow up, I guess, until, you know, last year, maybe October, when everyone else in the world was like, oh, there's something happening in Flint. But it had been going on before that.
The Flint people were like, duh, that's what we've been saying. And Flint has seen such hardship. It's really difficult to kind of say like when exactly it happened, because you can just trace it back for a while. And I was actually, we were filming Dr. Mona's presentation about lead. And one of the statistics that she showed us, it was before the switch, it was Flint kids already had higher levels of lead in their blood before it even happened than like the average Michigander. So Flint, I mean, even before the water switch, like Flint was already being dealt a much worse hand. Like they didn't have much to go on. And then they had the water thing happen, and they have everything else, and they aren't being listened to. And it's really difficult to kind of track down when it happened. Honestly, I mean, we could probably argue about it all day, but we really want to focus on what's going to happen now, because the past has already happened and it's horrible, but this can't happen again to any other city. Like Flint needs to be, you know, a warning. It needs to be a wake up call, and it needs help. It needs help from state government, from federal government. It's not getting enough right now, and that's really clear.
And I think we interviewed Michael Hood, and he even said that, like in his talk with us, he said, you know, if this can happen in Flint, it can happen anywhere. It can happen in Detroit, in Lansing, you know, in bigger cities. He's like, it can happen. He goes, just because, you know, any city with a predominantly like lower class group, it can happen, you know, it just. And so he was talking about that, and it was just, you know, it was kind of a wake-up call. And that's what he said. He goes, if people ignore Flint, he goes, they're going to be ignoring a lot of things that are really crucial to the future of our country. Yeah.
Have you guys reached out to the students at Virginia Tech?
You mean with Mark Edwards?
Well, Mark Edwards, he was a professor, but he also had a crew of 25 students that all went to Flint. They were all in for Flint.
Yeah, we were in contact with Mark. It was kind of a very last minute potential interview, and he is a very busy man, and he came here for like 2 days in Michigan, and it didn't work out with our interview this time when he was here, but we're hoping that next time he's in Michigan that he can sit down and talk with us and introduce us to his team and what they've been doing. So that interview is still tentative and up in the air, but we are on his radar, hopefully still.
And I believe his team is coming back to Flint. They're going to duplicate their study.
Yeah, I think in the beginning of March or coming up soon, I think was when they were supposed to come back.
Yeah, so I mean, that is another thing. I mean, you can come at this story from so many different angles. Like, there are a lot of different documentaries and news crews that are in Flint that are trying to tell this story. But we really want to really focus on the people. So we would love to get an interview with Mark Edwards, because he was really integral and he was contacted by a citizen of Flint. But the students of Virginia Tech, it's not necessarily as relevant to the people of Flint. We really want to focus on the citizens, the people who live there, really give an inside view of what it's like to live in Flint during this time, and like what's it like to have to cook with bottled water and little things like that. And can you even use a dishwasher? Like, what's it like to take a bath? Things like that haven't really crossed. They didn't really cross my mind until I was standing in the kitchen, and the Miss Melissa like was pointing to the dishwasher and she was talking about it, and I'm like, that's something that I totally take for granted. I didn't even think of that when I was thinking of it. It was just kind of like, oh, they can't drink it, but there's a lot of restrictions that they have. So the students of Virginia Tech, I have so much respect for what they're doing, and I have so much respect for what Mark Edwards is doing, but we really need to, especially since it's only going to be half an hour long, we really need to kind of focus on keeping everything as relevant and as powerful as possible. So the students of Virginia Tech are not as on our radar as much as like families and individuals, like even churches.
You're going back to Flint on Sunday. That's the day the Democrats will be debating in Flint.
Mm-hmm.
What's on your radar for Sunday?
A couple things, actually. We have a really big day coming up on Sunday. We are working on getting into Democratic debate. That's tentative. Everything's kind of last minute. We've been realizing with anything governmental, like we didn't get our press pass for Bernie until like in the middle of the night.
It was like midnight the day before, and we got an email and we're like, oh, cool, it's actually happening.
Yeah, so everything government we've been noticing is very like, oh, you can do it now, go. But we are going to an event, I think it's called Americans for Flint, and that is like an all-day event on Sunday. I was in contact with the group that is putting it on, and we're meeting with them early and getting to know them, meeting them so they can get to know us too. We're going to be hanging out with them for most of the day. We talked about breaking up into teams and someone going and standing outside where the Democratic debate is going to be going on, and getting if there's protests or just people wanting to say a word or two onto camera. So we've definitely, we're all very capable of breaking up and doing it, like just taking our own cameras, slapping a mic on there, and just going out in Flint. There's just so much to cover. So Sunday's going to be very, very intense, but I think it's going to be worthwhile.
What kind of equipment are you shooting with? Do you have any around that you can show us, or are you shooting on cell phones?
We use, our department has the Sony NEX50, which is a really solid camera, and then it has interchangeable lenses, so you can get some really nice shallow depth of field without sacrificing and having to use a DSLR. We also have, I own a Canon 60D, and then Isaac, our director of photography, has a GH3.
Yeah, and then we all have our own like DSLRs and cameras, and I've even shot stuff on my iPhone. I went and saw a play, and afterwards they were collecting money for Flint, so I just quick whipped out my phone, and like you just get it while you're there. That's the thing about documentaries, is a lot of it can be run and gun. Like something's happening now. If I have to film this on my iPhone, I'm gonna film it on my iPhone so I can get it. But yeah, we use just then like standard equipment, just basic lighting and like the lav mics and stuff. But yeah.
That when you get into the production, you go in with tripods, lab mics. What kind of light do you have?
Jenna's our gaffer. She's fantastic. We usually use an Ari kit, which has 3 different sized light and different wattage of lighting. And Jenna, I don't know how she does it. I'm not a gaffer at all. I can't. I see lighting. I'm like, yeah, I can. That looks right. But Jenna's like, no, something's wrong, and she'll move. She might not even move anything, and somehow it's better all of a sudden. I'm like, oh, yeah.
So just move it an inch, and suddenly it's a whole nother level. She's really, I think she's just a magician. But yeah, we use Ari kits mostly. Natural light is probably, the sun is a really, really good light. That's one of our interviews is entirely natural light, and it looks so beautiful, just the way that it turned out. But when it comes to lighting, sometimes you have reflectors, sometimes we have, at one point we had a shoot where we had to make a China garden look beautiful, and that was quite an endeavor, but it actually turned out looking like amazing. And because Jenna just was able to look at it and she's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And it was just like watching the China Garden transform into a real set for this legitimate documentary for this great important interview was really funny.
Are you guys, when are you going to graduate?
I'm done. Actually, Elise is the little baby of our group. We're all seniors except for Elise, so we are all done in May.
Yeah, I'm still a junior, so I still have 2 more semesters after this one. So May 2017 is when I'm done. But it's nice because I'll still be a student, so we can get into all the student film festivals.
So what's the future, Liv? In May, you're going to not have access to the university equipment, the rooms. Are you just going to hit the road with your documentary and hope for the best?
That'd be nice, but no, I actually have an internship lined up out in New York, so I'm gonna make the leap out to the big city and be a poor starving artist. So we'll see what happens. I mean, you know, the worst that can happen. I mean, that's the thing about film is we always joke about this, but you either make it or you don't. So you have to at least go out and try and move out to a big city and see what happens, because the worst that's gonna happen is it doesn't happen, but it could be awesome. So just I'm gonna make the leap out east and we'll see what happens.
What are you going to intern as?
I'm a production intern at Fourth Row Films. It is a production company on the lower side of Manhattan. So yeah, I have my orientation in May, so I don't know exactly what specifically I'll be doing, but they're predominantly a documentary production company, so I'll be working for them. So I'm excited.
I bet.
Yeah.
And so who's going to take from Flint to the film festivals?
A lot of it you can submit with without a box is what a lot of the festivals use. Is it's like very easy to submit through. And so that's what we kind of talked about is if we can get, you know, the grants and the funding that we're hoping for, it would be something where, oh, our documentary is premiering out in Colorado and we have the grant that can help at least one of us get out there to go speak on its behalf and talk about it and stuff. So, and it is nice because some of us are staying in Michigan, some of us are moving, and so we all kind of have liberty to maybe go to some of these festivals and see what happens with that.
Yeah, I actually read an article recently where it was about some of the easiest and most prestigious film festivals that you can get into are in China. So, I mean, if it's going to come down, we're going to make a whole bunch of DVDs, we're going to send them out, and wherever it gets accepted, we're going to kind of go from there. We have some contacts with the Traverse City Film Festival, which Michael Moore is heavily involved in. So hopefully that would pan out. That'd be really incredible. But right now we're kind of focusing on making it, and there are a few like dreams about, oh gosh, what if it gets into this? And it's kind of, we're in such a time crunch and we have so much going on. It's kind of like, okay, we'll think about that. Like over the summer is probably going to be just applying for every single like film festival that we can get our hands on.
You've brought up Michael Moore a couple of times. Is he aware of your film?
I don't know. We may be on his radar, possibly. I know he is. I mean, Michael Moore has a very, very strong connection with Michigan State University. And, you know, and a lot of MSU films have gone to the Traverse City Film Festival, and that's his festival. I mean, Isaac has met him and sat down and had dinner with him before. Isaac's our director of photography. So, I mean, we're hoping that it gets on his radar and that at least, you know, he sees it or hears about it. That'd be awesome. You know, he's kind of the icon or the figure of documentary film, I guess. So
yeah. He's very well connected, and he has some strong connections with Michigan State right now, but unfortunately his health is not at the best, so we haven't really been bugging him because we really want him to focus on getting better.
Where did you get the music for your trailer, and where are you going to get the music for the doc?
I think the trailer is probably just royalty free. I don't think Lauren did anything, but we do have a woman. We went and filmed a meeting with Michael Hood's organization, Crossing Water, at a bar in Lansing, and went there, and this woman opened up and she sang this beautiful song, and you know, she's a Michigan native, and the song is about Michigan. And she sang this song, and Lauren, our editor, just sprinted up to her and was like, we got the release form from her for her like her face being in our documentary, and then Lauren asked about the song, and she kind of told her what we were doing, and the woman was like, yeah, you can use my song in your documentary if you want. So we have a really beautiful song about Michigan that we know we're going to put in our documentary, probably more than once, I'm imagining.
Yeah, the artist also, she was like, oh yeah, of course, and she pulled out a CD, so we have like a really, really nice clean recording. We also have a lot of friends in like local bands. I have a few friends who are composition students here at Michigan State, so music is definitely, it's something that I'm not too familiar with, but I know a lot of people who are very talented at what they do, and what they do is music.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about Michigan State is there's a lot of other resources within the university, and then students within the university. Like we have friends that are very talented at graphic design and photography and music. And so, I mean, and again, being students and artists, it's always nice to get any publicity is good publicity. So, you know, if, hey, you want to help out by helping out with poster design, you know, yeah, of course, get their name on something. So that's also another thing about working with other artists within the university.
Have you seen any other documentaries on Flint?
Not complete ones, but we found a few other people who are doing documentaries on there. One, and that's the other thing we were talking about angles, and there's just so many different ways you can take it. I just saw one, and it's from the perspective of the emergency management team. So that's a whole documentary on that aspect of it. There's another one being made, I think, just about Michigan water crisis in general. It's about like the Detroit water shutoff and the Flint water crisis. And so that's another one that's kind of doing it. And then, I mean, we've seen a few other ones, but those are like the two main ones that we've found and had gotten contacted with. But yeah, like I said, there's just so many different angles that you can take on this crisis that I don't think any of them will be the same. Like they might have some of the key players like Melissa, Dr. Mona, Mark Edwards, but I don't think that they're going to have the same essence statement or angle.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different ways that you can approach this. I have watched Roger and Me, which is a Michael Moore documentary on Flint and the GM plant closing, but I haven't. It's the Flint water crisis did happen really recently, so we're definitely trying to track down anything that's in production, but a lot of things, a lot of it's been like trailers and things because things are still in the works because so much is still being created and produced.
Are you going to have a crew going to the hearings in Washington, D.C. on the 15th or the 17th?
We unfortunately don't have the fund. That's like, we don't have the funding for it, and also like the time. We always joke about how we're kind of playing in the big leagues with this documentary is what we've been saying, you know, because everyone else that's doing a documentary is from an actual production company. And that's what they do. Like that's their full-time job. And so for us, it's like, oh, I have class or I'm working or I just, you know, I don't really have the funding for it. So it's kind of hard for us to do all of that stuff as full-time students. But I definitely think we're holding our own in the big leagues for sure.
I don't know. My cousin lives in Bethesda, so maybe I'll just FedEx in my camera and be like, hey, do me a favor. Just quick go to this and get me some footage. But no, definitely we're a little bit stuck in Michigan right now just for scheduling conflicts and that kind of thing. But we're definitely, for the more national perspective, I've been watching so much, like reading everything, all the emails that are coming out, really digging my claws into anything. And like, especially if I'm ever just kind of not doing anything or cooking, I'll just put on the news and I'll find something on Flint, and there's always new things that are coming forward. And yeah, that's definitely been, it's a little overwhelming to try and stay in the loop with it.
Who's doing a good job on the news reporting, in your opinion?
I would say you are the best. You're always posting new things.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of good stuff coming out of CNN. Like Rachel Maddow has been really amazing. She's great, and she's been following the Flint crisis for a really long time. Like before really any of the other stations really even realized what was going on. I think she's probably arguably one of the key national players, just because she's been on it for so long.
So we're about ready to wrap this up. Is there anything you'd like to talk about that we have not discussed?
I mean, if anyone that's watching knows any families or anyone in Flint who really wants to get their stories out, they can go find our Facebook page, From Flint Documentary, and contact us from there.
Get that up.
Yeah, Oh, are we done? Yeah, no, I think it's really important for us to kind of make sure that everyone knows that why we're there, and we're not just there to like put a news story out and then leave. Like, I think that's probably what we want to be most clear about.
So you're on social media, you're on Facebook, you're on YouTube, do you have a Twitter account, do you have a blog? Oh, tell me about your social media presence and how that works into your production.
Well, I am always on the internet, like I said. I'm always on Facebook, and we try and update the Facebook especially as much as possible for people to stay involved. Like we had a whole week where it was like Meet the Crew week, and we kind of made it into a little competition. Each person posted their own bio and a little bit about them, and then we would share it from the Facebook page so our friends and family would see it, because you know your friends and family, especially your family, they're like, oh, what is so-and-so up to? And so they'll go like the page and they'll go check it out. But we had a little competition to see who could get the most attention off their own little bio. So we kind of made it something fun. And we also want our viewers to know us personally, like behind the documentary.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Elise, do you have anything that you'd like to close with?
I really just want to we are students, but this is not a student film. Like it's really important for us to really get Flint out there and make it really clear that just because they switched back to Detroit water doesn't mean this crisis is over. Like Flint still needs help, and it's clear that if this can't happen in any other city, like this Flint obviously still needs help, and the way that it came together as a community, I think, is something that's really, really special. And I shudder to think that if this could happen in anywhere else, I think this is definitely, it has to be a wake-up call. This can't happen again.
Yeah, and even after the pipes are fixed and the water gets turned back to normal, there's going to be kids with mental cognitive disabilities and lead poisoning for the rest of their lives. Like Flint is going to have to deal with this for generations. You know, they're gonna have to bring in different teachers to teach these kids with these new cognitive disabilities and these new learning disabilities. And so it's more than a water thing now, is kind of what we're learning. It's more than just, I mean, it stems down to someone did this to these people. If they can do it to them, why couldn't they do it to me? And just, it's gonna go on for a while. And I think this is a really big starting point for the country, maybe even.
You think anything will change? Do you think Flint will change anything?
I don't know. I think that Flint, like the people in Flint that are really like Melissa Mays, I think Melissa Mays she should be an inspiration to every single individual person in the United States. She shows that when you have a voice and you are passionate, you can get recognized and you can get platforms out there. I mean, that's what we were talking about. Like, you've gained so much attention, and she's like, I just say it like it is. And she's persistent, and she wants to make a difference, and she is making a difference. And I think that's a really important message for everybody. If you want something to change, you have to step up and do it.
She's definitely not one to be bullied. I think that they messed with the wrong moms on this one. Like Melissa Mays she's such a firecracker. She's really incredible. I genuinely, I have to believe that Flint's going to make a difference, because just looking at the key players that have already showed up and just how people are reacting to it, I think that there's going to be some really positive change that comes out of this horrible situation.
Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. The documentary is from Flint. It's going to be available April, maybe May. Check them out on Facebook and also on their YouTube channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. What's that?
Thanks for having us.
Yes,
Jeff.
thank you.
This is great.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Still stay on. I'll talk to you in the green room.
Sounds
Excellent.
good.
Okay, bye-bye.